Print design. In this lesson, we're going to address the design principles, structuring a layout, and using PDFs for print publications. We want to recognize basic design principles of balance, rhythm, emphasis, and unity, understand the role of whitespace, follow preliminary steps to plan a layout, set up a new document in desktop publishing software, use the grid to lend underlying structure to designs, and understand why PDFs are important in the print publication process. Layout is the arrangement on a page of all the key parts without regard to the specific content. A pica is a printer's measurement equal to 1/6 of an inch. The overriding idea behind good design is the relationship between similarity and contrast. Similarity in a design is what helps a viewer navigate and recognize the design as a single unit. Without similarity, a design is chaotic and the message is not clear. Contrast in a design captures, keeps, and directs a viewer's attention. Without contrast, a design can be boring and potentially ignored. Balance refers to a design principle in which the weight of elements is distributed in a visually appealing way. Balance is important because it is pleasing and restful to the eye. Unbalanced designs can leave a viewer feeling uneasy. To understand balance, consider an imaginary line dividing a layout in half. The design may be divided vertically, horizontally, or diagonally. To achieve balance, a designer must arrange the graphic elements so that all sides of the layout have the same visual weight. There are three types of balance. In symmetrical balance, elements are distributed equally on both sides of the axis, sometimes even in mirror images of one another. In radial balance, all of the elements radiate from a center point, like a starburst. In asymmetrical balance, the elements on either side of the imaginary axis are not equal or mirrored, but they carry the same visual weight, and therefore the overall visual effect is in balance. Rhythm is the design principle that connects elements in a design and guides the viewer's eye from one item to the next. Rhythm in a design normally shows up in one of three forms: regular, the fixed, even pattern of elements that suggests faster movement; flowing, a softer, more subtle repetition of elements, often involving curves and rounded patterns that suggest a slower movement; and progressive, a more rare form of repetition in which an element is depicted in various stages of progress that suggests movement through time. So look at these two images. Do the designs incorporate rhythm? What elements indicate the rhythm? What could be changed to use rhythm more effectively in these examples? Emphasis refers to a design principle in which certain elements in a design stand out more than others. There are three basic ways to establish emphasis in a design: placement, isolation, and contrast. Designers achieve emphasis by contrasting the properties of certain design elements, like the size, shape, color, and orientation. Unity is the design principle that pulls together all of the individual elements, making the design look like a single unit. Four general areas contribute to unity in a design: proximity, alignment, repetition or consistency, and contrast. In this image, notice that the pen is just slightly out of alignment. Does your eye want to straighten it? Does it bother you that it's out of alignment? The areas in which text or graphics do not appear have as much importance as the areas in which they do appear, called white space, or sometimes negative space. White space acts as a design element. A block of white space can be used as a means of guiding the eye, as well as resting it. White space can pose two problems. Trapped white space is white space surrounded on all sides by text or graphics. Rivers of white are found most often when text is justified because the extra space inserted in a line can be duplicated on the line above and below. Preliminary work before even launching your software means gathering your materials, brainstorming a design theme, choosing your elements, and sketching your layout ideas. After you've taken these steps, you should be ready to launch your software and get started with your design. When you create a new document from scratch, you must specify certain page setup options that will be applied to all of the pages. Things to consider when making page setup decisions: facing pages are two side-by-side pages, often also referred to as a spread. Number of pages is multiple page documents sent to a professional printer, and they must be set up in even signatures. Number of columns and size of gutters. Columns are non-printing guidelines used to organize and align elements on the page. A gutter is the white space between each pair of columns. Margins. Wide margins can make a design cleaner, but mean less content can fit on the page or spread. Narrow margins mean more content on a page, but can make a page look crowded and chaotic. Bleed. A bleed is an element that extends through the margin of a page right up to the edge. A grid is a series of vertical and horizontal non-printing guidelines on a layout that direct the placement and size of the objects on the page. A grid can make it easier to incorporate design principles. The series of vertical grid lines in a layout are referred to as the columns. The appropriate number of columns for a design will depend on the size of the page and the complexity of the design. General guidelines for determining the number of columns for a project. 2-column grids are useful for narrow pages and simple designs, as long as the column width does not make text line length too wide for comfortable reading. 3-column grids are more flexible since items can span 1, 2, or all 3 columns, and 3-column layouts work for almost all page sizes. 4 or more columns are usually the most flexible choice for page structure. Odd numbers of columns seem to work best in a design because they allow you to build asymmetry. You can add variety to a 2-column grid by having some elements span both columns. 3-column designs are relatively simple. In these images, can you see the underlying column structure? The vertical alignment of elements is the most important concern in design. Horizontal alignment is determined by how big an element is after you size it to fit the vertical columns. Vertical and horizontal alignment is important for establishing order in a design, but just as important is occasionally breaking the order to create interest. The overriding rule when breaking the grid is to do it for a specific reason, to achieve unity, balance, emphasis, or rhythm. Master pages are page designs that can be applied automatically to any page within a document. Usually include your elements that are repeated on multiple pages, such as headers or footers or logos. It can contain a basic structure that will be repeated on multiple pages, such as columns or standardized text frames. There are useful shortcuts for standardizing designs across a book series or any document series that share common elements. Master pages are often incorporated into templates. You will most likely generate PDFs directly from within your layout program. There are 2 basic tasks associated with PDFs: creating PDFs and viewing them. Some PDF software can both create and display PDFs. Other software can display PDFs but cannot create them. When you send a PDF of your document to a printer, you can be confident that what you saw in the PDF is what will come from the press. You can create a PDF for the press from almost any application. It's best to create a PDF from the press from almost any application. It's best to create PDFs using settings verified or supplied by the print vendor. And PDFX minimizes the chance of problems once your PDF reaches the press. Some things to take away. An overriding idea behind good design is the tension between similarity and contrast. Without similarity, a design is chaotic and unreadable. Without contrast, a design is boring and forgettable. Balance is the design principle that says the weight of objects is evenly distributed across a design. In symmetrical balance, elements are distributed equally on both sides of the axis, sometimes even in mirror images of one another. In asymmetrical balance, the elements on either side of the imaginary axis are not equal or mirrored, but they carry the same visual weight. Rhythm refers to how a viewer's eye travels through a design and is often established through repetition of a design element or sequence. Emphasis relates to the center of interest in a design and establishes a visual hierarchy that leads a viewer through a layout. It's often established through placement, isolation, and/or contrast of design elements. Unity in a design means that all of the individual elements of a design look like they belong together, and causes the readers to recognize the design as a whole before noticing its individual parts. Proximity, alignment, and repetition, especially in alignment and structure, contribute to unity in a design. If there's any questions, just let me know.